Good morning. Kevin here, Life22, and it is morning. Welcome to the morning show, Kevin, with Life22. There's a lot of repetition this morning. Still getting the crusties out of my eyes. So today's podcast is actually about municipal discharge in the river. So as a small business owner, somebody who actually has a business that rents canoes and kayaks for people to take on the river, I get concerned when people start pushing narratives and start, talking about, our river and things like that. And it concerns me in the fact that there's not a good public relations campaign, an educational thing that people can learn about, right? So this is kind of a tough topic. Almost every bit of this information you can find on the internet. You can make calls to municipalities and get some of this information. So I've spoken with many municipalities about this topic. I've spoken with, people that work for the health department, people in political office. I've spoken with a ton of different people on this topic. So, and just to be aware, I have not seen the council meeting from last night, which was many hours long, and 1 hour or more of it was public comment about this topic. So, river discharge. But I have seen all the prior common council meetings leading up to this meeting. Usually, there's a guy from Little Valley who comes, or is it Little Valley or Cattaraugus? One of those places. He's out that way. He shows up every week, and he gives a speech to the mayor demanding more, and there's not a ton the city can do more. I mean, you're going to have to add some legislation. There is some more you can do, but it's government. So you can't expect fast change like this. It's not like the house is burning down. Like, what do you mean it takes 3 weeks to dispatch the fire department? That's not the case, right? So, but it's also not a house on fire. So, pollutants in the river, one of the biggest, and you can check with the health department on, I believe it's the health department, because they also do economic or ecological environmental studies and things like that. They do wells. There's a ton of different things. The health department doesn't just regulate, restaurants and small businesses and, say you can't smoke indoors and you can't serve alcohol without getting in touch with the ABC board or the AB board, the AB board. Yeah. So there's a lot of different things that cover stuff like that. But the one concern, is that they'll tell you, if you get in touch with the health department, that one of the major issues at our river, or for any water runoff and leaching, actually comes from farm runoff. But there are so many government programs, the state, the federal government, they're all pro-farm, right? So they don't want people to be harassing farmers, because it's already tough to get people that want to be farmers. It's already tough to get people that want to be, it's already tough enough to have people that are just doing farming in general. And so that's why there's so many incentive programs for people to farm. Well, the issue is you have all these cows, chickens, goats, all this livestock on a small parcel of land or many small parcels of land, and they're pooping. And then there's a farm in Hinsdale, and I'm sure a lot of you know it, as you're driving from Ishiway through into Hinsdale on your way to Olean. If you're heading that direction and you look on the right-hand side, down in this little gully where there is a small tributary stream and a bunch of other places, if you go through in the spring, you'll notice that damn near the entire farm floods. Well, so all the land that the cows graze on all year round gets flooded. I remember it was a couple of years ago, it was flooded up to 16. And it was I can't believe the guy's house wasn't underwater. He's in a huge floodplain. Well, that's an example of the runoff. So it's picking up all that cow shit and it's washing it into the Allegany River and other tributary rivers. tributary streams that go to, the Allegheny River. So the municipality of Olean, as all the municipalities that bring fresh drinking water in and also have a sewage plant, they're required to test upstream from there before it enters their city and after it leaves their city. And then they also test their effluent. And this is true of all municipalities that have to discharge into the river or a tributary. So like for Olean, for example, if they test the water upstream and they test the water downstream, and the pollutant content of it isn't different. It is no different. So it's not significantly different coming into Olean as it is leaving Olean. They do a fish test on stuff like this, and what the fish test does is the fish test allows you to, I think it's like 7 to 10 like freshwater bass or something like that. I don't know the exact type of fish, but it is a very sensitive fish. And what happens is they put these fish in samples of the water upstream, downstream, and effluent. And I know for a fact that Olean's effluent, which is the water that comes into the sewer plant, it gets processed by clarifiers, digesters. They separate out, they separate the poop and the tampons and the toilet paper and all the other stuff and the piss and all the other sediment and sludge and grit and grime and debris. And so, all the solids get taken out in waste. They pull the toilet paper out first, and then all your your poop and stuff kind of gets like compressed, flattened, solidified, and it kind of goes out in giant bins that look like mulch. But then all the water that's left over is called effluent, and our effluent is damn near drinkable. Like, it wouldn't take much. It's easier to clean to drink than the water coming out of the river or water coming out of the ground. Like, it is super easy. Like, it is pretty close to drinkable. And so those fish don't die. They do like a many day test. I don't know if it's 3 days or a week, but I know that those fish do not die in our effluent, which is the pipe discharging into the river after the water's been scrubbed of urine and poop. Like after it's gone through the process, the effluent, the fish survive. But the upstream sample, before it ever comes into Olean, and the downstream sample, the fish die. And they test the water. So our effluent is such a small amount of water going into the river. Like, they test it, and it's a safe, DEC, EPA qualified, permitted discharge. We're allowed to discharge that because it's clean water. And so that amount of water that goes in there is inconsequential to the amount of water traveling through the river. And I don't think a lot of people go through this. So let's go through it real quick. In the average minute, 8.8 million gallons of water are flowing through the Allegany River. It's 8.8 million gallons of water per minute. In the last 5-10 years, the discharge into the river, I think, estimated largest, and they're all estimated numbers, right? Because there's a pit, right, where the pump is. There's a pump that, like, when sewer water runs, right, when, like, in your house, if you ever go in your basement, you'll notice that all your pipes are running downhill. That's your pitch. Your pipe has to have a gravity pitch to it, right? So all your poop, 1/4 inch drop, a foot, I believe, is the number. 1/4 inch drop per foot is the number to roll solids. 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch is for gray water. So that would be things like, just water, hands, soap, sinks. If you just have like kitchen sinks and stuff, then 1/8 inch is fine. Showers, that's 1/8 inch is fine. 1/4 inch is going to roll solids. That's going to be toilet lines, things that are going to, maybe, bigger commercial sinks that have grease traps attached to them, where they're going to get more solid type debris through them, things like that. Your So those are so like once you get to one of these portions, like as if you just pitched it from your house, maybe your house is in the lowest area of Olean. Well, you're not going to make it to the sewer plant because you're downhill from it. So you've got to get to the nearest spot where they can put it into a pump station, where it up pumps it to a higher location, and then it can gravity feed the rest of the way. Well, when they go to these pump pits, what happens is the pump can only pump so many gallons per minute. And so, and as it's a lot of this, like the speaker from Little Valley says, your issue is that there's too much storm runoff. So the pump can't pump. There's more water to be pumped in that storm sewer or the sanitary sewer than can go through that pipe or go through that pump's assembly. And so what happens is the pit fills up. Well, the DEC, the EPA, everybody says, well, it is more harmful that water fill that pit and overflow into a street and potentially go into people's homes or where kids play than it is to go in the river. And so there at the top, towards the top of it, there is a pipe that discharges to the river on the off chance that the pump fails or that there's too much water flow and it has to overflow. There is not an impeller or a flow meter, anything to regulate how much sewage. So if you look at your water meter or your water bill from the city, it's estimated how much sewage you use for your sewer bill based on how much water that you have going through your meter. So there's a little something just to kind of better kind of explain what you have going on. If you, so it's calculated based on rainfall and how much the pump can handle and how quickly the pit could fill up. And there's just a lot of different, how big the pit discharge tube is. And so it's like, and how long did it go on for? So duration's a big portion of it. And so these are estimated numbers, but the largest estimated number in the last like 5 years has been about 2 million gallons over a 24-hour period. So if you have 2 million gallons over a 24-hour period, well, if on average, non-storm conditions, you are 8.8 million gallons per minute, 8.8 million gallons divided by, or no, sorry, not divided by, times, that's minutes. That's per minute. So times 60 minutes. That's 528 million gallons an hour. An hour times 24 hours is 12 billion 672 million gallons. So now you divide, you take 2 divided by that number. 2 million gallons divided by 12 billion 672. You are at you're less than, you're, oh, I hate how they do that. If I expand it, it doesn't want to do it. You're dumb. So it is 1.578282 repeating to the negative fourth exponent. Like that is a significant, that you are like in the 100s of thousands of percentage points here of how much that 2 million gallons of discharge would be. Now, something that is on when you become an operator, or a lot of people, in order to get your certification to work at a sewer facility, unless you're just like Joe maintenance guy at the bottom of the totem pole, a lot of those guys have certifications for operating permits and all these other certifications that they have to keep. So one of the questions on the state and federal run, or what, I don't know if it's state or federal run, but these tests, it's the government agency that certifies these things. One of the questions on the test is how much pollution is going to a sewer plant. How much pollution on average is going to a sewer plant? What is the percentage of pollution going to the sewer plant in the normal piping that comes into a sewer plant? And the answer to the question on your certification, so whenever you take this test someday, is 2%. On an average day, non-flood conditions, no overflow, the average municipality, the average sewer pipe, the average sewer plant is receiving, in all of the liquids and solids that they're receiving, 2% of it is pollution. And pollution is defined by toilet paper, tampons, poop, the the you know the different chemicals, mineral discharge, biological discharges that would be found, because if you have a glass of, what's the difference between a glass of water and a glass of piss? Well, the glass of piss is mostly water, and there are acidity and some other thing, different types of, like ammonia, different little chemicals in it. And so they're lumping all that portion of it into the pollution category. So like actual pollution, actual raw sewage is 2%. So if you say, all right, well, so out of that 2 million gallons, only 2% of it on a normal day, so we're excluding the fact that it is a storm and that majority of the excess water is being diluted by storm runoff, because either A, you have certain catch basins that the city has to relocate onto a storm sewer, which is it's on the infrastructure list. It's part of, the city allocates money every year to make those changes. And so as they're redoing streets and redoing infrastructure, they are making said changes. There is a consent decree with the DEC that they have to follow every year, and there is a 50-year plan. Like, it's a 50-year plan. So it's not like, so these people are coming, we want it done tomorrow. Well, why would the DEC put it on a 50-year plan, or an elongated plan until it's done, or a non-foreseeable plan? Like, we don't know when it's going to be done. We're just saying we're going to go 10 years at a time, 20 years at a time, 50 years at a time, because we know that we're also going to change the rules from a government perspective to say, hey, these tolerances are getting smaller, which means that you have to now make more infrastructure changes. And eventually storm sewer is going to have to be treated too, because, you can't not put bottled water with fluoride in it out into they have the fish. They have to be drinking bottled water, crystal bottled water, and it's like, anyways, so normal storm conditions. So, and that's not most of them, by the way. When the catch basins are being, are not tied into the sanitary and not the storm sewer, because the infrastructure needs to be upgraded here and there. That is a minor portion of it. Majority of it are people's homes and gutters still tied in. So, well, it's a big gray area. So like the city's estimated portion is a smaller portion than the actual like people's homes. So when those things get infiltrated, a lot of it is those, your homes have gutters that need to, that's a big way of getting rid of it. Your home's taking too much sanitary. Your home is taking too much non-sanitary water into its sanitary sewer, right? So you see on the outside of people's houses, they have their gutters, they go into cast iron pipes, they go into the old drainage system. Well, those are supposed to not be happening. And people say, well, I don't want to, if I discharge it in my yard, it's going to flow back and hurt my foundation. Well, and that's a good point. And what the city wants you to do, or needs you to do, is either discharge it out into your yard, and then eventually it does roll back and it erodes your foundation, or put yourself in a separate storm sewer, which goes out to the street, or they have dry wells you can build. I mean, all this costs money to the homeowner, and that's why this is a third rail when it comes to politics. None of the common council wants to pass this. I'm sure they do, but they'll never get reelected. You start telling all the homeowners that you have to go around and they're mandated to not discharge into the sanitary sewer, you're going to have a lot of homeowners. There's going to be more homeowners up there griping than you're going to see the people from Salamanca showing up and their allies or whatever they go by. And so, that's a large portion of what's going on. Anyways, back to our storm discharge, right? So all this water, excluding the fact that it is not diluted by storm water. If it was just a normal day and it just couldn't handle it, it discharges 2 million gallons. Well, only 2% of that is pollution, which is sewage. So 0.02. That was 3.02. So out of that 2 million, 40,000 gallons was sewage. If it was a normal day, here's the issue: is it's not a normal day. And they don't have an exact figure on this, but they have estimates. And the estimates are I think it's 18 times diluted or something along those lines, if not more. I mean, it is so inconsequential. You're probably 2% of that 2%. after the fact that they've diluted it. So if you were to divide that number even just by 20, it's 2,000 gallons of sewage on a normal day. And the river is already at a higher rate. So what happens is you have on the storm day, you're probably looking closer to 2,000 gallons of sewage. And it's all diluted, by the way. It is diluted. The same way that like nobody complains when you go, they have to get rid of heavy metals. So what they'll do is they'll pick up cow shit from these local farms, and when you're buying fertilizer at the store, and they don't want heavy metals to be deposited like all in one place. They don't want you just to dump a big pile of lead somewhere if you're not going to recycle it. If it's just going to go to waste and be covered in a landfill, they send them out to a place that grinds it up, and then they spread those heavy metals out through bags of fertilizer in fertilizer companies, along with a little bit of soil and things like that. And so like when you go and buy a bag of soil, it's got heavy metals in it that they can with better certainty, they're distributing it across and diluting those heavy metals across, the plains, right? Across the surface of the earth. So it's not all dumped in one spot, causing significant harm to one person. It's causing very minimal, almost inconsequential harm to lots of people. And so that's kind of that's the process, right? So for you to be saying, hey, this is extremely diluted. So that 8.8 gallons per minute is, and we're guessing because depends on how bad the storm is. So like they don't have you would have to do testing every time they do this. And I don't know who would track this information. Maybe the Army Corps of Engineers. Every time there's a storm, the Weather Center. So, but 8.8 gallons per minute times 20, or 8.8 million gallons per minute. So it's 176 million gallons per minute. And that's probably it's closer to accurate than some of the other, than just saying it's normal. So 176 million times 60 minutes in an hour is 10 billion. 10.5 billion gallons times 24 hours in a day. 253.44 billion gallons of water per day. And you just dumped in 2 million. And so now that tiny exponent is even further. And then knowing that the water that's being discharged is also diluted by said stormwater. Like, I get it. Everybody has a big issue. Nobody wants one poop in the river. The example is, though, this isn't like your kid has a friend come over to go swimming in your pool and that kid pisses or takes a shit in the pool, right? Like, yes, it's not the end of the world. It is icky. It is uncomfortable. But your mom or dad grabs a skimmer and pulls the turd out of the pool, right? The difference between a pool is stagnant, so you have to add chemicals and keep water circulating through a pump and a filtration system. With the river, it's constantly moving, so it is kind of self-cleaning to a degree. It is more self-cleaning than a pool because it's got natural circulation and you're doing water changes. So all the water and changes in the runoff is all coming down. So, but the example with the pool is what most people think of when the city discharges in the river. What actually happens with the river is more like you and your kids are in not a pool, not a commercial pool, not a huge public rec pool, not a river, but like an ocean. My kid's friend pooped over there in the ocean. Like, there are worse things to worry about in the ocean than that. Like, I get that, okay, what can the city do to change this? But it isn't an up in arms, you can't use the river. You cannot use the river because the city has discharged sewage. Because the river is already so disgusting it kills fish. They're sensitive fish in this scenario where they're testing them. But it is normally disgusting. And it's disgusting before it even gets to us. And so it's probably less disgusting on storm days because it's so diluted with storm water. I would be attacking the people upriver. Who's upriver from us? You have Portville, you have Cuba, you have all these other places that are upriver from us. And that's like, you have all these municipalities that are ahead of us, and the water's filthy before it gets to us. And so, yes, we have this issue. And also check with those municipalities. I'm waiting to hear back. But yeah, check with those municipalities. You're telling me that when they get storm runoff, that they have pristine infrastructure, and their municipalities haven't they have codes in place, and everybody has a storm runoff pipe coming from their houses, which must be newer, right? No, how about they're just as old as Olean houses, if not older, and they have older infrastructure, and they're not discharging into the river. But let's go after Olean, because Olean's the big fish, if you will, to keep the metaphors alive. Or how about it goes down to Salamanca? How about it goes down to Salamanca, where if you were to go to the state park, for example, and you go to the other side of, like, you go to the other side of the state park where it's reservation, and how they have camper after camper with discharge tubes that just dump onto the ground, into the river, into the streams. A lot of times when I'm bringing this information up to different people, as I'm asking these questions at different government entities, and asking people that are boots on the ground, and I say, hey, health department, hey, sewer plant, hey, people from, sewer plant from Portville, sewer plant from Allegany, the different sewer facilities at all these other different locations. As you're calling people, you're calling the health department, you're calling this person, you're calling that person, and you say, like, how do you satiate the people of Salamanca when the water's flowing through to them, even if it isn't coming from Olean? And they say, well, a large portion of the problem is you go down there and they have no disregard. They have disregard for the Ohio, is what I keep hearing at these local meetings, right? They have a complete disregard for the river as well, because why would they not enforce it on their own territory, on their own nation? And they're discharging, and they said, go to the state parks. There's a lot of people, and it's a common denominator amongst all the different people that I've interviewed and spoken to. And it is funny that, we have to make sure that we don't discharge, and we're working at it. The city is working at it. I just wish there was a bigger PR campaign that explained to the general public these numbers, and making them more readily available, and having tutorial videos other than just me being out there. But that aside, one of the numbers are, go see what they're doing to the river, and you go down to the state park where the Allegany River flows through, and they have these different lakes and things like that. And they're discharged on their side, the nation side of the state park, they are discharging their campers into it. Where on the state park side, I've taken my camper down to the state park. You pull up on your way out, and you can discharge into, they have like a septic tank or some way, and then that gets pumped, and you just discharge your RV into it. At the city of Olean, they offer that to people when you have those like big, the coach buses. If you have a coach bus, or you have an RV, you can take it there, and then you can get, they'll bill you, and you can discharge your RV or your coach bus's septic, or your sewage tank into a drop spot where it goes into our system. It gets repumped back in, mixed in, distributed, and then re-clarified. So we're doing it. How come the people that are complaining that we're not doing a good enough job aren't doing it themselves or enforcing it with their people? That would be another portion of this argument. I guess one of my big concerns with the whole ordeal is not just the public campaign. I think, and I have spoken to some aldermen about it, I think that they're right. A PR campaign needs to come forward. I think a PR campaign would be very helpful to educate the public, but I do think that there's a lot of people that are up at this local meeting, that come to these meetings, that are there because they enjoy the fight. I do believe that is a portion of it. Like, it's funny because as these different arguments build momentum at common council meetings, and then all of a sudden it was, it was one or two people, and then it was three people, and then it went back down to two, and then it was just one, and then it was two again, and then it was three, and then it was one again, and then all of a sudden now there's 47 people up there. And it's funny because it's this usually this for the when it's like under 10 people, it's always the same people. And they usually don't have all the information. But then when it builds up enough momentum that Channel 2 News is down there, like I heard they were there last night, and you have all these people. And then all the same people that are protesting the BLM movement, and they're out front of the city building on Fridays for, the Gays for Palestine, and free Hamas, and whatever other signs they're holding, or it's the we should have the right in New York State to kill babies. We should, it's all those different movements. It's all those left-wing activists. It's funny how they all show up. They all show up with their blue hair, and half of them haven't changed the signs, and they're holding up, they're standing in the back. And it's funny how these movements, they're discharging a river. That's just as bad as not having gays living in Palestine. And then, and that is the issue. It's those people that are looking to rabble rouse and looking to pick a fight. And I get it. Like, everyone has that little, like, when there's not a war, you want to have a war to fight, right? Like, there's that mentality that people just need to pick a fight. And it's more true in New York, right? Like, that's why we have a lot more bar fights than Texas, right? Like, you don't go down to Texas to pick a bar fight. You might get shot. But it's one of those, like, there are a bunch of people that just would rather see a fight, would rather get the attention of taking on a group of people, taking on the man, that is the adage and that is the thing that you can think about when you see all these people show up. Like, why are you here? What are you here for? Oh, you're here because somebody pooped in the river. Well, guess what? Most of the residents of Olean don't even, they don't use the river up, downstream from the sewer plant. And it's probably actually cleaner because it's diluted with our effluent, which is clean. So, it is one of those things. It is one of those things. It makes you think. So we're going to have more on this. I know this ate up a large portion of our show. But I hope it was almost a 2-hour podcast with Della Moore last night. So I hope you got to catch that on the channel. It took a while to upload. It was late by the time it finally probably uploaded to YouTube. It was on Transistor right away. Della is so soft-spoken, we had microphone issues. So I was like 3 hours with Della all together yesterday. And it was about an hour and 50 minutes on the air with her. So she is just a phenomenal guest. I love Della. So I hope we'll have more of her in the future, get her on the show some more. She's got upcoming events. And then we'll chat with you guys next time. Life22, we'll see you tomorrow. I hope this was informative. I hope that you learned something from this, and I have a feeling I'll be reviewing last night's council meeting, like, on the show. So thanks, guys. Like, subscribe. We'll catch you next time. Life22.